What's good, Wizards fans? It's your host, the real Ed Oliver and Brandon Scott. Today we have special guest Richard Stayman, aka Mavs Draft from the Locked On NBA Big Board. We're going to talk about Bilal Coulibaly. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so I butchered Bilal's last name. It's Mavs Draft. How do you say it?
Coulibaly.
Okay, there you go. So I've said it many times. It just kind of escaped me there. So how you feeling today, man?
I'm excited. Obviously, some more news broke literally right before we even recorded. The whole Bradley Beal, you know, might be now closer to negative trade value at this point, which is wild. And also, I don't have my John Wall shirt, so I'm a mixed bag, man. It's a real mixed bag.
Yeah, Mavs Draft. He's somewhat of a Wizards fan, as you guys remember last year. He had his John Wall jersey on a couple of times. He came on the show as a great guest. But we're definitely gonna talk about the Bradley Beal news probably tomorrow or next week. But it's unfortunate news. But I mean, with the contract, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. So you were at the NBA Draft Combine. You did say that Wes Unseld Jr. was really active. So who were some guys that stood out to you at the Combine before we do get to Bilal? And who were some guys that you thought that Wes Unseld Jr. really talked to a lot, or that you got to see him kind of interview a lot?
Yeah, I think Cason Wallace. I think he's somebody who immediately pops. I know in his pro day with Excel, which was probably the most crowded pro day, I would say, that was happening in Chicago. Cason Wallace he was hitting threes. He was showing off explosiveness, and Wes Unseld Jr. was there. At the time, they didn't have a GM, so he was kind of their main representative from everything I saw. But I really liked him a lot. I think he's somebody that made himself stand out. I think Brandon Podziemski is another guy who I know the Wizards were at the combine scrimmages, as were every other team. And Podziemski stood out. And also he was the second best player probably and played the second day of combine scrimmages, which no one else did. So even though they don't have a pick in his range immediately, it could be something where, hey, if the Wizards want to get back in the 20s, which I fully support given the odd state the Wizards are in right now, where you have to kind of just get as much talent as possible at the best chances, Podziemski could be somebody that I think they would really like.
Yeah. Okay. So Wes, he talked to Kassan. I know Kassan had a workout with us again, and then he canceled his workout with the Hawks, which could mean nothing. And then you brought up a good point that the new GMs are here, the new front office is here, so they could have a whole different kind of way of thinking from Wes. But it was intriguing that Wes was very vocal at that time at the Combine representing the Wizards. Kassan's a great player. Podziemski's a good player, and the Wizards, I think they should try to get another first round pick if they can. They do have 3 second-round picks this year, so we'll see how that goes. But about Bilal, where do you have him ranked on your big board? And if you could tell us about his story, because we know that he played kind of on not the JV team, but he played on the younger team, and then he went up to the team with Victor Wembanyama. But how has he really jumped onto the scene in the past couple weeks or months since the playoffs started for that league?
Yeah, I have Bilal in number 20 right now on my board. I go back and forth. The big concern for me is just he's not much of a jump shooter. It's a very slow shot, very wide base. He gets blocked on it a good amount. It's very easy to contest. That stuff alarms me. But you look at the length, he's about 6'6", 6'7", with an easy 7-foot plus wingspan. He's got, I think, just one of the better feel for the games. The cutting is where it really pops. He's an outstanding defender, going to be able to guard, honestly, 1 through 4 at a minimum. So I really like that. Great athlete as well. He has long strides as a slasher. That's something I always look for. So I really like that. It really just comes down to the shooting, and, you know, he can find foul trouble a little bit too much and just kind of feeds into lack of discipline. But a little bit of how he got onto the scene. He's been playing with Victor Wembanyama for quite some time. The French national teams are the same age, roughly. Bilal's actually like a year and a half younger. but they generally have been playing in the same competition. And it took a while for scouts to notice, hey, who's this guy next to him that keeps making these crazy dunks, outstanding cuts, is always at the right spots at the right time. And that was Bilal Coulibaly. And really come January or February, he came onto the scene, and he's ever since then, like, it really helps also that since May, there's been no basketball, or April, actually, even. There's been no basketball. The last 2 months have been his and Victor's floor with some of the other international guys, but mostly them because they're, title contending team in their French league. That's why he has popped onto the scene. So it's been a really interesting story, really unique, I would say, for any European player to come on this late. Generally, it's some of these rewatching some tape. That's how these guys rise. But like, he's doing it through live basketball.
Right. And do you see him potentially going in the lottery?
I think so. I think some of that stuff is a little bit smoky, where it's like, oh, he's going to go up to 8 or 9. I don't know if that's true. Although NBA teams and sports teams in general do operate a lot off of recency bias, it could happen. I think he's closer to 11 through 14 than 8 or 9 or 10.
Right. Okay. All right. We're going to get into a quick break before we get to Brandon's question. And before we do that, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. If you're having a tough time getting Nationals tickets or Orioles tickets or Mystics tickets or any tickets to any concerts in the DMV area, definitely use the Gametime app. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. You get images of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Locked on NBA's mock draft special is here, and it's bigger than ever. Follow along in the entire first round in a 6-episode ultimate mock draft experience. Only Locked On can deliver. All episodes are available now on Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, Brandon, you can go ahead.
Yes, sir. So I'm gonna dive right into level of competition and looking at some of his strengths and some of the areas he needs to work on. Looking at players that play in foreign leagues, obviously every league is different. Some leagues are more defense, some are not, more offense. Looking at the LNB Pro A, I got to tell you, they are a defensive league. They play some dog defense. And, looking at Bilal, man, defensively, I mean, he can defend multiple positions. Defensively, he's a dog. His closeouts, the way he can alter shots, I like. So, looking at a potential fit, do you see him as a guy who, do you see any adjustment for him sliding into the NBA game? Like, obviously, kind of like Denny Avia coming from a foreign league where the defense is there already. Do you see any adjustment offensively? Can he start? Can he come off the bench? Or do you see him more of a developmental type of dude?
A little bit of the last two. I think he's more off the bench, developmental. Depends on the team. If you're trying to be a team that's in the play-in, he's going to lean towards that developmental and, matchup dependent. But I think with him, it comes down to, look, he's going to be able to cut. He's going to know where to be offensively. It'll negate some of that just lack of shooting. And then also the defense is just, it's outstanding, right? That's 6'6", 6'7". The ideal height to guard just about anybody on the floor, plus 7+ foot wingspan. So I think that combination is going to get him minutes. So many teams need defense, right? You can never have enough wing defenders, enough defenders who can guard multiple positions and also finish at the rim really well. If you put him in that very specific role and allow him just to play that role for 15, 20 minutes a night at most as rookie year, I think that's a really big upside swing. And then, let him only shoot open threes. You don't want him shooting any contested threes or anything like that. I think that would be absolutely beneficial and very pragmatic too.
Yeah, because looking at him, like I said, this week I've really got into his game, man. And I'll say that from an offensive standpoint, he's very athletic. I mean, he's got a burst too. He's got a heck of a first step. The athleticism's there. I mean, it's like, wow. The thing is, like you said, his shot, and like I said, I compared a lot to Denny Avia, current player on our roster, because while the defense is already solid, I know one area that Denny struggled with is his shot release. Getting that shot off quicker, and I kind of see that with Bilal. He's got a slower release. He's got to work on that. So saying that, the fact that he is athletic and he does have that fast first step, do you think he can eventually develop into a guy that can have a consistent jump shot, or do you think he's more of an athletic guy?
Well, it's interesting. So when he was in the second league in France, he shot 36% from three, granted 1.5 threes a game. It wasn't exactly the highest volume, but also in the French main league, he did get to the line quite a bit. Or excuse me, I have the numbers backwards, I believe. But regardless, in one of the French leagues, it was 3-point percentage high, free throw attempts low. But looking at it in the second French league, he got to the line just about 7 times a game. And that was 77% from the free throw line. And generally, free throw percentage is the better indicator than 3-point percentage. But having a little bit of both here and there, I think does do a lot for him. The touch, I think, is there. I think that's what matters. But in terms of the form and actually being able to shoot over, a guy who's coming over last minute in the NBA where everyone has long arms, it's far away. I think it's something he could develop. It's just he's got to speed up his shot. The base, it's his legs go very far out each way. I think some of that stuff just needs to be tweaked.
Okay, and now I'm kind of ask you one more question before I pass the mic. Looking at kind of the vision of the team, obviously the news about Bradley Beal, the vision's kind of shaky. It looks like it's not going to be a rebuilding team, maybe a retooling team where he might be expected, if he indeed is drafted by the Wizards, he might be expected to play minutes off the bench. Do you think that his defensive prowess is enough to give him significant minutes, even though his offensive tool bag may not be there yet? Do you think his defense is good enough to kind of automatically give him minutes off the bench for a team that is trying to get a playoff position?
I think so, especially when you consider just how few or how many games guys generally miss. There's always going to be times where you go, all right, someone's starter is out. We've got somebody who can come in. The Wizards also, if I'm not mistaken, when they were, I don't know if they've made the playoffs with him on the roster, but Isak Bongo, right? Like he was supposed to be that defensive guy. I'm so sorry to bring that name back, but I remember against the Mavs, he did some stuff too. Like it hurts me just as much as it hurts you, but similar size, actually, like in terms of a very raw outlook of ball skills, in theory, defense, size, no jump shot. There's some overlap, but Bilal is just so much better at a younger age and so much more fluid. But I think for me, it just comes down to, you look at how he's always going to be able to carve out a role because he has that dynamic defense that has already been proven to win overseas at a professional level. Plus, he's very efficient at the rim. I have a hard time finding him not sticking in any capacity where it's like, look, yeah, he can't shoot, but I don't think that's ever going to hold him back outside of a few games when he's just missing. He's not going to be much of a negative because he makes up for it by impacting the game so much without even scoring.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I said, I'm big on this guy. I'm a believer that the Washington Wizards need to get another first round pick, because if we can come out of this draft with Casey Wallace and Bilal, because I'm saying Bilal to me has really went up my board because his athleticism is crazy. He can, his first step is nice. He can defend. He's dunking on folks. So like you said, if he can eventually bring along a jump shot, I'll be very happy. But, defense goes a long way, because the biggest thing about foreign leagues is for a long time, you mainly saw shooters, Stojakovic's, it wasn't a lot of European guys or even Australian, even, foreign leagues, period, we're known for defense. And now you're starting to see a lot of guys come out of these leagues who are dogs on defense. So, I'm with you, man. His defensive capability is intriguing. So.
Yeah. And right. The Wizards had a bottom 10 in defense this last year. So like it's not just an upside play just for the sake of an upside play. It's truly, he fills a need.
Yeah, and so his defense is great. His athleticism is great. So what from his offensive game do you see translating to the NBA? I know he has a nice Euro step. He can finish with the left hand. You watch some of the playoffs, he really went to his left a good amount of times. And of course, he's a strong finisher. So what do you see translating from his game, his offensive game?
Yeah, I think it's going to be finishing at the rim and playmaking for others in a very simple way will go a long way. And then also just the defense. I think those are the three areas where he doesn't. It's such a simple scouting outlook on him, but it really is just, hey, like he finds ways on pick and rolls, right? He sees the roll man trapped on the left side, he'll come up on the right side, even if it's not necessarily great spacing. It still is a hole within the defense. He just sees the holes very well, I think, and that's what makes him just such a strong, just effective cutter and finisher. Is he knows where the holes are and he knows how to identify them, act on them. Even if he's not shooting, he catches his defenders off guard. Like if you're facing a defender who is not face guarding you, he's going to beat him.
Right. Okay. And then there's some numbers I found from Sam Vecini. He brought up in the half court that he averaged just 5.1 shot attempts per 36 minutes in the half court setting with the Metropolitans this season, which is not a lot. And it shows that he's more of like a transition guy. Now, would you take stock into those numbers there? Would you take stock into that if you were a GM?
Okay. So for a lot of times, yes, I do think those numbers matter. My thing with Bilal is, especially when you look at how young he is playing in such a high level league, half court, I think a lot of that stuff it means more if you're a primarily slashing guy. Like if you're doing ISOs from the top of the key getting to the rim, yeah, it matters. But that's just not what Bilal's doing. It's very rare. He does more. He might have a few triple threat drives out from the top of the key or the side. It's just so much more rare. His finishing skill really lies in just that he just cuts. Like he's on a move from the 3-point line without the ball getting to the rim. Like that's where he really gets his best finishing. So for me, yes, I get it. Like as a ball handler, there are concerns about how he'll get to the rim in the NBA from himself. But again, like we've been talking about, like I feel like most of his touches at the rim are going to come from cuts.
Mm-hmm. All right. And just looking at some of his numbers in the playoffs, he averaged 8.9 points per game, 1 assist, 1 steal, 1 turnover, 3 boards, 68% from the free throw line, which is definitely looking for improvement there. And from the 3-point line, he shot 23% off of 2 threes per game. So really does need to improve his outside shot for sure. 9 games, but just looking at some of the film, he's really stood out and popped. So he did get an invite to the NBA green room that was just announced today for top 20 picks. So there definitely is it's really real that he most likely will be drafted in the top 20 at least. So if you had an NBA comparison, who would you compare him to? And then out of the last prospects, Denny, Johnny, Corey, Rui for the last 4 years, where would you rank him between those prospects?
Let me think about the Wizards picks. Remind me the list. I know Rui, Denny, and I'm blanking on the others.
Rui, Denny, Corey, and Johnny. Mr. Taco Bell.
Not close. He's number 1. I will say, I think I like Denny a little bit more pre-draft, but knowing what we know now about just how his game didn't translate as cleanly as we thought, I think it is him. And Rui was good. Like my order would be Bilal, Denny, Rui, Kispert. Corey's good though. Like I think he's for whatever reason, and I know I caught flack a long time ago with Wizards fans because he shot poorly as a rookie, and I was probably too hard on him. But like he still is somebody who's going to be a very positive player who you can trust in any offense because his shooting's so great off of screens. He can spot up. He's standstill. You can't leave him alone. You can't leave him if he's in the corner. No help defense from that side. Like you cannot do it. And I do think he is very good, but that's completely off track with the questions. Bilal, I would say, is probably the best, knowing what we know now. The comparison, I'm really bad at comparison, so I do want to let you know of that. But like you look at why can't he be like if the ball handling and playmaking really develops, why can't he be like Warriors Iguodala? It's like kind of a lazy comp. And I don't know. I can't remember if he still had his premier athleticism like he had when he was in Denver and Philly. But like if you put that athleticism on him with that level of impact winning without shooting, that's kind of where I see Bilal. And again, it's kind of a lazy comparison because Iguodala, I feel like he's thrown around every time. There's a 6'7", 6'6" plus guy that can't shoot but can pass and defend. But at the same time, like it is the impact, like that is what he is for Metropolitans.
Yeah, I was thinking Sean Marion just because the athleticism. Of course, not the funky, weird shot from the chest, but just off the athleticism. And Sean Marion actually became a solid 3-point shooter with that shooting form. But I was just thinking he just needs a point guard, and the Wizards don't really have a point guard that can set him up like that at this point with lobs and oops and transition stuff. But I was just thinking that just off of a standpoint. Sean Marion was a heck of a cutter. He was a heck of a defender, just an athlete. And that's what I see Bilal as. But I do think Bilal has some ball handling and some shiftiness to him where he can be somewhat of a creator. So that's just the upside with him. I do think he has the highest floor, maybe in that range that he's in right now, and probably the lowest ceiling. Like he probably is the biggest boom or bust prospect in the draft right now. I know some people are even comparing him to how Sekou. I'm probably gonna butcher his last name too from the Pistons, where Sekou had such a high ceiling and a low floor as well. So I can see Bilal kind of falling anywhere in his career trajectory. He's just such a mystery box of a player.
Yeah, he's going to be someone very interesting to watch. And, I say this as a scarred Mavs fan that had to watch this happen to him in 2013. But, I mean, if he goes 13th, like I'm scared because that's where Giannis went, right? I've seen people throw around, like, what if he has that Giannis upside of, like, he's super young. And I don't think, first of all, for me, I don't compare players to all-stars unless, like, it's the top 5 prospects. Like, it's really hard for me to because all-stars are rare. Like that caliber of a player is rare. Like it's 35, 40 players to that caliber of 450 players. Like the odds just aren't there. So I'm generally hesitant to compare guys to that. But I do think if there was ever somebody to model his game after, the lack of shooting, the feel for the game, he impacts his game early, has growable, scalable ball skills, it could be him. And he's so freakishly athletic. Like you imagine him the same way Giannis filled out his frame. There's a lot. I don't think he's actually Giannis, but again, there is like that what if scenario.
Yeah, he's just got to get in the weight room like Giannis did. I mean, you can say that for every prospect coming out, but Giannis really, really got in the weight room. And Bilal bulks up, man. He definitely could be a scary prospect into the basket with that athleticism. So, Brandon, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I got one more question. Comparing him to the situation with Deni Avdija. I'm a believer that with Deni Avdija, his career trajectory would have been different if he went to a rebuilding team where he could kind of develop, and really work on that shot. So looking at Bilal, what do you think is the best course of action for him as far as his career? Do you think, obviously he could come and play defense and contribute to a team looking to make the playoffs, but as far as his development and his trajectory, as far as his career, is he best served on a rebuilding team, or do you think getting that playing minutes off the bench is better for him?
A little bit of both. I mean, it's always hard to say like what team is going to do what. Washington actually might be a good landing spot just because if they do finally pull the trigger and boom, like Washington is now top 5 pick next year, might be really good for him. But at the same time, are you going to just have him sit in the corner and not even cut? Like that could be a really detrimental thing to his offense. The defense still could be there. But the problem is with his range, unless a team like Detroit or something trades in for a second pick or Charlotte for the first round, like I think it's hard. I think it's hard to really get him in a comfortable spot. Like, and right now's NBA, there's no truly like, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no team right now that's about to hit year 1 of a hard rebuild. Like if they are, San Antonio kind of was that, but they got Wembanyama, so that's over. But I think for me, it's, if you had to draw up the ideal spot, it'd be somewhere where it's just unlimited offensive freedom. Like let him play in a flow offense, a motion offense, where it's constant movement, constant ball movement. You cannot put him in like a ball dominant guards situation. Like I would hate him in Dallas personally. Yes, the cuts would be fun, but I don't think he hits a full development. He's going to be more, if you're putting him in that situation, you're developing him to be just a high end role player. If you're letting him try to get a star upside, like, yeah, he should be going to a team that can afford to develop him like that. And again, Detroit, someone of the teams that's picking in the top 5 outside of Portland, I think would be really good for him.
Yeah, I agree. But I think as far as a fit in Washington, here's my thing, especially going back to our previous draft picks, is that, under Scott Brooks, he was hanging out in the corner. They weren't utilizing Deni. When they put the ball in his hands, he responded. He's one of those players where he needs the ball in his hands. And with Bilal, I think that if indeed we do draft him and we want to see him be successful here in DC, play to his strengths. Put the ball in his hands because, let him slash. Like you said, let him slash. Let him do his thing. I think that's success overall with the Wizards. Just find the strengths and the minuses with your roster and play to the strengths. Because especially with Bradley Beal, with the news, the likelihood of him staying is very high. So to build around Bill, you want to play to his strengths. And obviously we have to hit in this draft. And that's why I believe that we need another first round pick because, with that contract, with that Supermax, we've got to find talent through the draft and these other avenues because we're not going to be able to afford these free agents with that contract. So, if you could pick up Bilal, like I said, his athleticism wows me because it's just, I have a whole new respect for a lot of foreign leagues now because, like I said, it varies. Some leagues, defense is not a priority, and I'm very hard on them. But when I looked at this league, man, they're dogs. I mean, I was watching the tape this morning, man, and they're in your face. I mean, it is tough to score in that league. And so you got to be athletic to be able to slash in that league. So it's a whole new era in basketball internationally because, like I said, when I was growing up, man, you were a lot of the foreign players, Siakovic's, they were known to be shooters, finesse guys that aren't really known for defense, but can light up shooting. But now it's different because, look, Jokic show you, man, look, they can ball. These foreign players can ball, and they can come into the NBA, and they can contribute. And if you look at Jokic, he was a second-round pick. So if you're able to hit on a guy like Bilal, I'm all for it, especially if you can come out this draft with Bilal and Kaysen. I'm just saying. So I'm very, very intrigued.
Yeah, I would love Bilal and Kaysen. I think that changes not only the identity of the Wizards, but it also makes them such a better team now. I'd love that.
Yeah, same here. So, E, I'm going to ask you, if you are able to pick up Bilal and another guy in this draft, are you picking Anthony Black still, or are you rolling with Kaysen Wallace?
That's a good question. You're saying if we could trade up to like pick 15 and get Bilal?
Oh, absolutely.
Something like that. You know what? That's a good question, man. Anthony Black or Hassan Wallace? I'd probably still go Anthony Black. I just like his creation. I do like Hassan though because he can shoot better than Anthony Black. But right now, since we do have a new front office and a new developmental system, I would go with Anthony Black. Now, if Tommy Shepard was still here, I'd probably just go with Hassan because Hassan is probably more of a sure thing than Anthony Black, in my opinion. So I go with Anthony Black.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, like you said, under Tommy, man, he will probably shoot for the only New Zealand guy that plays in Siberia. I mean, we all know how Tommy was, man. But I can dig it. I mean, my thing is, if you can get both, I'd rather get a guy who already has offensive potential. And I don't want to draft two guys who both can play defense, but because I know with Anthony Black, I love his size and I love his drive. I know the shot is one of the questions for him. So if you're able to get Bilal, I'd rather go Kaysen because I don't want to get two guys who both need to work on their offensive game. So that's where I'm at. But I can dig it.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. It's a really good question. So, Rich, aka Mavs Draft, is there anything you want to promote before we wrap it up?
Locked On NBA Big Board. We're in the final stretch. We're, as of recording, 8 days out, which doesn't feel real at this point. But we're on there every day, like every other Locked On podcast. We are free everywhere you listen. So we're doing a lot there. But my Twitter's going to have most of my stuff where I'm promoting, big boards, community mock drafts, things like that. Trying to get scouting reports, and I'll do this throughout, after the draft too. But scouting reports of almost every player in the top 100. So if you're trying to look him up and say, like, who's this guy on the Wizards Summer League roster? Boom, I got you. Like, no one else is covering that. So everything flows through my Twitter at Mavs Draft. Right.
I know you had Yannick Zos on there, right?
But I forgot about him. I was like, who? And I hadn't heard that name in so long. I was like, who's this? But I forgot it. I was very quick to forget him because he was youngest player in the draft with no skill. But he is an insane defender.
Oh man! All right, and then we'll wrap it up. But last thing, you just real quick, if the Wizards did pick Bilal at pick 8, what grade would you give it? You can just get real quick, and we're gonna wrap it up.
If they pick him at 8,
yeah.
On a scale of like 1 to 10, I think it's like 7.5. It's a good pick. It's a little bit of a reach, but like I justify it, right? Where it's, I want to make sure he's not just sitting in the corner, but that's my one reservation. I think it'd be mostly good. More good comes from it, right? Immediate improvement. It helps you get back to the playoffs. The big question is it long-term development or no?
Right. All right, thank you for coming on, man. We just want to thank you guys for listening. Make sure you guys check them out. Check out Mavs Draft on Locked On NBA Big Board. Make sure you guys check us out for tomorrow. We're going to be talking more draft and, of course, the Bradley Beal talk and Porzingis talk. Make sure you guys subscribe and hit the notification bell and subscribe wherever you guys get a podcast. Hail to the Wizards. Peace.